Have you ever been disappointed in yourself because you couldn't make yourself do something you genuinely wanted to do? Not something you had to do. Something you actually cared about. Project you've been dreaming about. A skill you've always wanted to learn. A change you've wanted to make. A promise you made to yourself. You knew it mattered. You wanted it. And yet, somehow you still couldn't make yourself begin. If that feeling sounds familiar, you're not alone. Because procrastination has a strange way of becoming something much bigger than a missed deadline. Do you know it starts with a task, but eventually it becomes a question about who you are. You begin wondering, why can't I just do this? Why do I keep delaying things that matter to me? Why can I work hard on some things, but avoid the things I care about the most? And slowly, many people arrive at the same conclusion. Maybe I'm just lazy. Maybe you think you lack discipline. Maybe you think other people have some level of self-control that you somehow don't. Maybe you've started believing that if you were smarter, more motivated, or more determined, you wouldn't struggle with this. But what if that conclusion is wrong? What if you've been trying to solve the wrong problem all along? Because over the last few decades, psychology has changed the way researchers understand procrastination. It turns out that procrastination is not simply about poor time management. It's not simply about not caring. And it's not always a failure of discipline. Sometimes the thing you are avoiding isn't the task itself. It's the emotion attached to that task. The uncertainty, the fear of getting it wrong, the pressure of expectations, the discomfort of starting something important. And once you understand what is actually happening inside your mind, you may stop asking, "Why am I so lazy?" and start asking a much more useful question, "What am I trying to avoid feeling?" Because that question changes everything. For a long time, procrastination was explained in the simplest possible way. You are not doing something because you don't want to do it badly enough. You lack discipline. You lack motivation. You lack willpower. It is an explanation that feels logical. After all, if something matters, shouldn't we simply do it? If a student knows an exam is important, why would they wait until the night before to study? If someone wants to improve their health, why would they continue avoiding the habits they know would help them? If someone has a dream they deeply care about, why would they spend hours doing anything except working toward it? At first glance, it looks like a contradiction. But the problem is that this explanation only looks at the outside behavior. It sees the person avoiding the task. But it doesn't ask the more important question, what is happening inside the person before they avoid it? Because two people can look exactly the same from the outside, while experiencing completely different things internally. One person may avoid a task because they truly don't care. But another person may avoid the exact same task because they care so much that starting feels overwhelming. The behavior looks identical. The psychology behind it is completely different. This is where our understanding of procrastination began to change. As psychologists began studying chronic procrastination, the persistent habit of delaying important tasks, even when we know it will hurt us, they noticed something surprising. People don't only procrastinate on things they dislike. They often procrastinate on the things that matter most. The presentation that could affect their career. The application that could change their future. The conversation they know they need to have. The project they have been thinking about for months. The strange thing is, the more meaningful something becomes, the more emotional weight it can carry. And that emotional weight changes the way the brain responds, because sometimes the obstacle is not, "I don't want to do this." Sometimes the obstacle is, "I don't want to feel what comes with doing this." That difference is the beginning of understanding procrastination. So if procrastination isn't simply laziness, and it isn't simply a lack of discipline, then what purpose does it serve? Why would the human brain repeatedly choose something that creates long-term problems? The answer leads us to one of the biggest discoveries in modern procrastination research. Sometimes procrastination is not about avoiding work. It is about escaping discomfort. For years, procrastination was treated as a problem of time. People were told, manage your schedule better. Create better systems. Set clearer goals. Use your calendar. Break your tasks into smaller pieces. And while some of those strategies can help, they miss something important. Because many people already know exactly what they need to do. They have the plan. They have the information. They understand the consequences. And still, they don't begin. Why? Because the moment we face an important task, we are not only dealing with the task itself, we are also dealing with the emotions connected to it. A difficult project may bring uncertainty. A big goal may bring fear of failure. A new challenge may create self-doubt. A task with high expectations may create pressure. And when those emotions appear, the brain naturally looks for a way to reduce discomfort. This is where procrastination enters. Not as a conscious decision to ruin our future, but as a short-term attempt to feel better. Imagine you need to start an important presentation. You open your laptop. The document is empty, and immediately a thought appears. What if this isn't good enough? What if I don't know where to start? What if I put in all this effort and it still fails? The presentation itself is not physically painful. Writing the first sentence is not impossible. But the emotions connected to the task create resistance. Then you notice a notification. You check your phone. You watch one video. You open one social media app. For a few minutes, the uncomfortable feeling disappears. And that moment of relief teaches your brain something powerful. Escaping this feeling works. Problem is, the relief is temporary. The task remains. The anxiety returns. And the cycle begins again. This is one of the most important ideas in modern procrastination research. Researchers Timothy Fihl and Fuchsia Sirois describe procrastination as closely connected to short-term mood regulation. In simple terms, your brain prioritizes feeling better now, even when you know it may create problems later. This does not happen because your brain is broken. It happens because the human brain has always been designed to respond strongly to immediate experiences. Immediate threats. Immediate discomfort. Immediate rewards. The future is abstract. The present is real. And this creates a conflict. The future version of you wants the task completed. But the present version of you wants relief from the uncomfortable feeling happening right now. That conflict is where procrastination lives. And this explains something that confuses many people. Why can you spend hours doing things that require effort, but still avoid the one thing you actually need to do? Because effort is not always the problem. Emotional resistance is. You can spend 2 hours researching something you enjoy. You can organize files. You can clean your workspace. You can prepare endlessly. Yet the one action that moves you forward remains untouched. Because preparation feels productive, without creating the same emotional discomfort as actually beginning. But this discovery creates an even deeper question. If procrastination is a way of escaping uncomfortable emotions, why do some people experience this struggle more intensely? Why do thoughtful, ambitious, and high-achieving people often find themselves trapped in this pattern? To answer that, we need to look at what happens when the task is not just important, but connected to your identity. One of the most confusing things about procrastination is that it often appears in people who are capable of doing the work. People who are intelligent. People who are ambitious. People who have achieved difficult things before. From the outside, it doesn't make sense. If someone has the ability, why would they delay? But the answer may be hidden in something that often makes these people successful. In the first place, they think deeply. They analyze possibilities. They care about outcomes. They want to make the right decision. And those qualities can be powerful strengths. But under certain conditions, the same strengths can become obstacles. Think about the difference between a simple task and an important task. Sending a casual email may require almost no emotional energy. But sending an email that could affect your career? Different feeling. Starting a hobby is easy. Starting a project that represents your dream? Different feeling. The more meaning we attach to something, the more psychological weight it carries, and sometimes that weight makes beginning harder. One way this happens is through overthinking. The mind tries to remove uncertainty before taking action. It asks, what is the perfect approach? What if I choose the wrong strategy? What if I make a mistake? What if there is a better way? The problem is that some questions cannot be answered through thinking. They can only be answered through experience. You cannot think your way into certainty. Sometimes action is the thing that creates clarity. But when the mind keeps searching for a perfect answer, preparation becomes a comfortable place to hide. You feel like you are making progress. You are learning. You are planning. You are researching. But the moment that creates real progress, starting, still remains ahead. Another factor is perfectionism. Many people misunderstand perfectionism. They think perfectionism means wanting to do things well. But healthy ambition and perfectionism are not the same. Healthy ambition says, I want to improve. Perfectionism often says, if I cannot do this well enough, maybe I shouldn't begin. The standard becomes so high that starting feels risky. Because once you begin, you create the possibility of falling short. And that possibility can feel threatening. This leads to an even deeper psychological layer. Identity. Some goals are difficult not because the task itself is hard, but because the result feels connected to who we are. A failed attempt is no longer just, this approach didn't work. Can start to feel like, maybe I'm not capable. Maybe I was wrong about myself. Maybe I'm not as talented as I thought. And sometimes avoiding the task protects us from facing that possibility. Because if you never fully try, you never have to confront the fear of failing after giving everything you had. This is why procrastination can become especially confusing for ambitious people. The person is not avoiding because they don't care. Sometimes they are avoiding because they care so much. The task represents something important, a dream, an identity, a future version of themselves, and the emotional pressure attached to that possibility becomes overwhelming. But understanding this changes the question. Instead of asking, why can't I just be more disciplined? A better question becomes, what makes this task feel emotionally difficult to approach? Because once you understand the emotional barrier, you can finally work on the real problem. But insight alone is not enough. Knowing why you procrastinate does not automatically make it disappear. The next question is the one that matters most. If your brain is trying to protect you from discomfort, how do you move forward without fighting against yourself? Once you understand procrastination differently, the solution also begins to look different. Because if the problem was simply laziness, the answer would be obvious. Try harder. Push yourself. Become more disciplined. But if procrastination is often your brain trying to escape discomfort, then fighting yourself harder may actually make the cycle worse. The first step is not forcing action. The first step is understanding what is happening. The next time you notice yourself procrastinating, try changing the question. Instead of asking, why am I so lazy? Ask, What am I trying not to feel right now? Maybe the answer is uncertainty. Maybe it is fear of failure. Maybe it is feeling overwhelmed. Maybe it is the pressure of needing to do something perfectly. The goal is not to judge the emotion. The goal is to identify it. Because you cannot solve a problem you have not clearly understood. The second shift is learning to separate starting from finishing. Many people avoid tasks because they mentally experience the entire journey at once. They don't see, write the first paragraph. They see, complete the entire project. They don't see, study for 20 minutes. They see, master everything I need to know. The brain reacts to the size and emotional weight of the entire outcome. So the first step is to reduce the emotional barrier. Not by pretending the goal is meaningless, but by making the beginning feel possible. This is why small starts are powerful. Not because small actions are magical, but because starting changes your psychological state. Opening the document is different from thinking about opening the document. Writing one sentence is different from imagining the entire article. Taking the first step gives your brain new information. The task becomes less mysterious. The fear becomes more specific. The resistance often begins to decrease. Another important shift is moving from perfection to progress. Perfectionism creates a hidden rule. I can only begin when I know I can succeed. But that creates a problem, because confidence usually does not come before action. It often comes from action. You learn by starting. You improve by attempting. You gain clarity by moving. Waiting until you feel completely ready can become another form of avoidance. And finally, there is something many people underestimate. How you speak to yourself matters. When people procrastinate, they often respond with criticism. They become frustrated. They attack themselves. They create more shame. But shame is an uncomfortable emotion too. And if procrastination is partly about escaping uncomfortable emotions, more shame can create even more reasons to avoid. Self-compassion is not the same as letting yourself off the hook. It does not mean saying, "It doesn't matter." It means saying, "This is difficult, but I can understand what is happening and take the next step." A person who understands themselves is often in a better position to change themselves. The goal is not to eliminate every moment of resistance. Everyone experiences hesitation. Everyone experiences discomfort. The difference is learning not to treat discomfort as a signal to escape. Because discomfort does not always mean something is wrong. Sometimes it means something matters. And that brings us back to the question we started with. Why couldn't you make yourself do something you genuinely wanted to do? Maybe the answer was never that you didn't care enough. Maybe the answer was that you were trying to avoid a feeling you never learned to understand. And once you see that, the way you approach yourself begins to change. At the beginning of this video, we asked a simple question. Why can't you make yourself do something you genuinely want to do? For a long time, many people answered that question with criticism, like, I need more discipline. I need more motivation. I need to stop being lazy. But after understanding the psychology behind procrastination, a different picture appears. Maybe the problem was never that you didn't care. Maybe the problem was that the things you cared about carried emotions that were difficult to face, like the fear of failing, the uncertainty of starting, the pressure of doing something important well. And when those emotions became uncomfortable, your brain looked for relief. Not because you were weak, not because your goals didn't matter, but because, in that moment, feeling better now felt more urgent than achieving something later. The next time you find yourself procrastinating, pause before judging yourself. Instead of asking, "What's wrong with me?" try asking, "What am I trying not to feel?" Because that question takes you closer to the real problem. And understanding the real problem is where meaningful change begins. Procrastination is not a battle between a disciplined version of you and a lazy version of you. It is often a conflict between two different needs, the part of you that wants a better future, and the part of you that wants relief from discomfort right now. The goal is not to hate the second part. The goal is to understand it. Because when you understand why your mind is trying to protect you, you can finally learn how to move forward. The key takeaway is, maybe you're not procrastinating the task. You're procrastinating the feeling attached to it. But this discovery leads to another important question. If procrastination happens because we are trying to escape discomfort, why do we often wait until we feel motivated before we act? Why do we believe that motivation should come first? Why do we keep searching for the perfect moment when we finally feel ready? Because motivation feels like the missing ingredient. But what if we have misunderstood motivation too? What if waiting to feel motivated is another reason we stay stuck? In the next chapter, we'll explore why motivation often fails us, and what actually creates lasting action when motivation disappears.